My friends, today we are going to talk about conflict avoidance, and most of us have been brainwashed from a very young age to avoid conflict at all costs. You know, your teachers, your doctors, your parents, your leaders, most of our leaders, they're all programming us to just sit down, shut up, and follow whatever arbitrary rules they come up with. And the truth of the matter is, if you are going to take control of your life, if you're going to break free of the rat race, you're going to get in a whole lot of conflict on the way up the ladder, and a lot of people are going to try to take what you have once you get to the top. So to be a leader, to achieve your full potential, you've got to get familiar with conflict and how to deal with it. And you got to develop some skills around confrontation and know how to deal with aggression when it comes your way. So in this video, we're going to talk about conflict avoidance and when it's a good thing, when it's a bad thing, and how to recognize, each side of that. And then I'll also talk about 5 or 6 different things that have helped me personally, because guys, if you're the type of person that just hearing the word conflict, confrontation, argument, disagreement, if these types of words are already raising your blood pressure and stirring up a whole bunch of emotions, you're exactly who needs to watch this video, because that's where I came from when I first started in my career. Was a very conflict avoidant place. And anytime conflict would rear its head, I would step away from it and find some way to get out of there because I was just nervous about conflict in general. I was very intimidated by confrontation, and it was a huge weakness of mine, and it really held me back. Most of the conflict avoiders out there are really people pleasers, right? They're Mr. Nice Guys. They're just trying to make everyone happy, and they don't want to rock the boat too much. So again, I'm going to tell you about how I kind of developed my ability to get into productive conflicts and deal with confrontation. And I'll tell you some specific stories and tips that really helped me along the way. But like most kids, I was just like you probably taught that violence was a bad thing, that confrontation should be avoided, and that anger was fundamentally a bad emotion. But just like Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny, these are just fairy tales that our parents sell us because it's way easier to sell that lie than deal with the complex reality. And just like a 20-year-old that still believes in the Easter Bunny, if you remain conflict avoidant into your adult life, you are going to severely stunt your social and economic growth.
Excuse me, I believe you have my stapler.
So how do you know if you are a conflict avoider and if this is something that you need to work on? Honestly, I always kind of knew deep down that I was intimidated by confrontation and conflict. So you should kind of know if this is you already.
The word yes has changed my life here.
No, thanks.
But like I said, your typical conflict avoider is going to be a people pleaser. It's Mr. Nice Guy, someone that doesn't want to rock the boat and just wants to fit in and get along with everyone.
Go, you iguanas! Yeah! Go, you barn owls!
Anytime a potential confrontation or disagreement comes up, your conflict avoider is going to figure out some way to get out of it. Maybe they'll make a joke, they'll change the subject. Worst case scenario, they'll just emotionally shut down. Instead of risking any disagreement at all, they'd rather bite their tongue and bottle up their emotions. A lot of the times, even the people closest to a conflict avoider won't realize how unhappy they're becoming. Because instead of being honest with themselves and their partners about who they are and what they want and what makes them tick, conflict avoiders would rather silently build up resentment for years and years, all while laughing and plastering on a fake smile. And ironically, it leads to the exact types of blowups that the conflict avoiders are trying to avoid in the first place. Well-balanced leaders who can artfully engage in conflict and disagreement are constantly course-correcting their relationships and their partnerships so they don't see these explosive disintegrations of relationships that your conflict avoiders typically see. At the end of the day, conflict avoiders are fundamentally liars. They habitually lie to everybody around them, and even worse, they habitually lie to themselves. So why is this a big deal at all? So let's say you have 3 people working for you, and each one of those people is making one small mistake per day. Most new managers and most new entrepreneurs are just going to let these small mistakes slide. They're going to say, it's not worth my time. It's not worth this person disliking me. They might go and start gossiping about me in the company, and I have, more important things to do today anyways. But the reality is those 3 small mistakes per day are going to compound into don't know the math. But those 3 little mistakes per day are going to compound into 1,000 little mistakes per year. And worst of all, your team is never even going to know that they did anything wrong because you weren't honest with them. You didn't tell them what the expectations were, and you didn't correct them when they made mistakes. There's only 2 ways a story like this ends, and I've seen it play out many, many times before. You either run out of money and have to fire everybody so they all hate you anyways, or you eventually train yourself to be able to engage in constructive conflict so you can have better partnerships and better relationships with the people around you. How you do anything is how you do everything, and conflict avoidant people eventually lose their ability to engage in any productive conflict at all. These people get walked all over, they get disrespected, and they feel terrible about themselves in the process. People who lack the ability to assert themselves and communicate effectively are doomed to become bitter and unhappy people. In their quest to avoid any confrontation in the short term, these people allow thousands of problems to aggregate around them and permanently just cloud their thinking and their logic and their vision. So I definitely don't want you to go away from this video thinking conflict is a good thing or avoidance is a bad thing. They're both agnostic. They're just words. They're tools for you to use and selectively deploy when the situation calls for it. But you never want your character to be defined by your motivation for conflict or avoiding it. To be an effective leader and to build the life that you're trying to build for yourself, you can't act impulsively, either towards conflict or away from it. And telling a little lie right now in the short term to avoid a little conflict is an impulsive decision. And when you habitually engage in that behavior, it becomes who you are. You just become a liar. You become someone that is disconnected from reality and your own opinions and truth. One thing I've learned dealing with conflict avoidant people is that they generally don't even know what they want. They don't even know who they are.
I'm so lonely.
These people's primary motivation in life is to avoid any conflict, any argument, any disagreement. And in that motivation, they have completely lost track of what they actually want in life. If your primary motivation is just to avoid conflict or engage in conflict, you are not going to be able to build yourself up to your highest potential. Now, when I jumped online and did some Googling to see what kind of advice people have out there, most of the advice around conflict avoidance and conflict resolution is really geared towards people that are really uncomfortable with it. And again, the truth of the matter is leaders need to get comfortable with conflict, confrontation, aggression, disagreement, arguments. All of these things you're going to have to engage in quite a bit on your way up to the top. You know, some of the advice, and I don't want to call anyone out or make fun of anyone. If this advice works for you, then great. Some of the advice I saw on Reddit that didn't seem very good, though, was getting over conflict avoidance by imagining you're doing quests for your wife. Another piece of advice is essentially to just become ignorant and not care about things anymore. Another one here is to just never let anyone yell at you ever again.
No yelling on the bus!
And none of these recommendations are actually bad advice. I would actually say that some of these are really good advice just on a case-by-case basis. They don't answer the core question that people are asking, though. How do you become the type of person who is so confident in themselves that they can deal with any conflict or confrontation that anyone throws their way? Let's get into the actual meat of the video now, and I'll tell you how I made that transition and how that evolution happened in my life. And then I'll give you a couple quick tips and things that you can really quickly flip the switch on and get into a more not conflict-prone lifestyle, but a less conflict-avoidant lifestyle. So in my own life, guys, I used to be so conflict-avoidant, it hurt. I had very high expectations on myself. My parents had very high expectations of me. And even though I dropped out of high school, I was going to do big things. And conflict avoidance, confrontation avoidance, argument avoidance, all of these things were really rooted in weakness for me. I felt too weak to deal with confrontation and conflict, so I avoided it at all costs, and I tried to accomplish things outside of that. When I was managing the most people directly, that's when I eventually got cancer. And I don't know if it's attached or not, but I was such a people pleaser and I put so much time and energy into making sure that my staff and my team liked me that, it wasn't even about accomplishing things in the company anymore. It was just about making people feel good. And that is the trap that you want to avoid. So one situation where I very much learned the value of conflict when appropriately applied was when we were doing one of our trips in China. Before coronavirus, we used to have a trip called Sourcing Summit. We went to China twice a year with 30 to 50 clients, and we would go to the Canton Fair with them. We would go to different suppliers and factories, and we'd go all over China and help them make more money in their e-commerce businesses, their Amazon businesses. So the first time we went over there, it was not the smoothest trip in the world. And because I was such a people pleaser, and I still am, I just know how to meter it a little better now and manage it. But because I was such a people pleaser, it was just all of the burden of the event and everyone's expectations and everyone's happiness. I let that all sit on my shoulders, and it was really, really tough. And when you're a people pleaser, this is what I'm talking about with conflict avoidance. My job at this event was to represent my customers, my clients that were there and paid me to be at that event. My responsibility was to give them an awesome time and make sure they made a whole lot of money while they were there. But the hotel we stayed at had never seen this type of internet activity with 30 to 50 entrepreneurs working out of the hotel. So we had all sorts of different Wi-Fi issues and internet issues, and it just was not working. So for days and days on end, I was going up to the hotel staff. I was going to the people that I paid and saying, hey, we have some internet issues. It would really help us out if you could fix it. And I did not want to start a big confrontation, but we needed this internet fixed, and people were breathing down my neck and getting real pissed off about it. So I kept pushing, I kept complaining, and as conflict avoiders do, I would, sit there for hours, bite my nails saying, man, should I call back down? And what should I say? And what if they get mad at me? And this and that. Eventually, one of my business partners, Edmund, walked down to the hotel front desk with me, and I was going up there to have a nice little conversation and see if I could politely ask once again. Edmund gets up to the front desk and we say, hey, we got some internet issues. And they say, hey, one sec, I got a phone call. Edmund leaps over the desk, grabs the phone out of the woman's hand, slams it down, hangs up the phone, grabs the phone and rips it out of the wall and says, listen, there's not going to be any more phone calls until we get the internet working. After that happened, the front desk sent the manager out, and the manager somehow figured out how to go out and buy new Wi-Fi routers and get them installed in just a few hours. At first, I was absolutely flabbergasted that my buddy Edmund would do this. But obviously, after the fact, I was amazed, and I had a whole new respect for him because he was a man that knew how to apply conflict and aggression in an appropriate way to get what he needed for the people that he was representing. Guys, in business and in life and in relationships and in everything, there's going to be unpleasant moments and there's going to be conflict. There's going to be confrontation. If you have a mental block that's holding you back from those types of situations and making those types of moves on the chessboard of life, then obviously you're operating from a severe handicap. The truth of the matter is, I had a whole bunch of leverage in that situation. The hotel still had an invoice out to me, and I still could just choose not to pay the hotel because we had Wi-Fi issues. But the problem is, if you're a conflict avoidant person, you are going to block yourself off mentally from even realizing that you have that type of leverage. When things get dirty in business, either because you have to get dirty or someone gets dirty against you, you have to understand the moves that are available to you. And unfortunately, most people are so conflict avoidant and so non-confrontational that there's a whole area of moves that they will never understand they can use. Now, let me say for my buddy Edmund's sake, he is not a violent guy. This is the most violent I've ever seen him, but it was very appropriate in hindsight, and it got everything that we needed done. One other thing I want to say too is this was in China. He probably would not do this in the United States or anywhere else. And we also paid like $100,000 to this hotel for this Wi-Fi. So again, you have to understand how to apply conflict, aggression, confrontation. You have to understand how to apply these things selectively and when the time is appropriate, when it's called for. Another situation that every entrepreneur, if you are a people pleaser, you are going to have a nightmarish time and you're going to lose a whole lot of sleep when you have to fire people for the first time. The first time I had to fire people, it was an absolute nightmare. I paced around for hours. I mean, It took me like 6 months to even do it after I realized that it had to happen. And when the day actually arrived, I probably delayed it 6 or 7 times. And 2 weeks later, I finally had the person come into my office and did it. But oh my God, I nearly had a nervous breakdown because you are like wrecking this person's life. You are completely changing their life, right? So firing people, you are going to have to become intimately familiar with confrontation, conflict, how to initiate it. And firing people is kind of make or break. Like you got to do it at that point. Because again, you're either going to run out of money and have to fire the person, then they're going to hate you and think you're a terrible leader and have no respect for you. Or you can course correct in real time, fire the person, at least they might respect you a little bit, and the company survives and you get to keep going on and fight another day. So firing people, absolute nightmare, and I still have a lot of trouble with it. It's never a fun thing to do, but you need to figure out ways to mentally work out how to not have a mental breakdown every time you realize that someone needs to go. So let's go through some of the different tips and tricks I can give you and talk about how you can become a less conflict avoidant person. First of all, you've got to reframe all of these words like conflict, confrontation, argument, disagreement. If you have an unhealthy emotional relationship with these words, you have to just go in and research them. So in general, if you realize that you have an emotional connection with a word, you need to dive into that word and logically understand and break it down a little bit, because words are just words. They should not control your emotional state. And if they do, then you have a problem because other people are going to be able to control you with words. And that's not a fun place to be. So reframe these words and any words that you have that unhealthy emotional relationship with. And on the same page as reframing some of these words that you have an unhealthy emotional relationship with, I would also look at removing some words and phrases from your vocabulary. Things like, I don't really care, or I guess, these unenthusiastic halfway words, you've got to get rid of these if you want to truly understand who you are and what drives you. The second thing I would say is prioritize honesty over the fleeting feelings of other people. Ultimately, every time you tell a little white lie, and whether that's just biting your tongue and not saying anything or saying, hey, that's good work when you don't really think so, every time you do that, you're digging yourself deeper and deeper into this hole. So you have to start prioritizing honesty and truthfulness over everything else. People don't want to follow dishonest, cowardly leaders. They want to follow strong leaders that will go into battle on their behalf because it's the right thing to do. They want leaders that are going to be truthful, honest, and loyal, that they can trust. So if you want people to trust you, you have to stop being conflict avoidant and you have to start being honest, both with yourself and with others. Another thing that's going to help you a whole lot is finding friends that respect you and don't avoid conflicts. The problem with being conflict avoidant is any person that doesn't respect who you are is going to end up walking all over you, whether they realize it or not, because you are not going to stand up and fight on your own behalf. But if you can find friends or business partners or relationships in general with people that respect you and don't avoid conflict, you're going to see just how productive conflict can be working with them or having that partnership with them. For instance, with my buddy Edmund, he'll jump on the phone with me sometimes and say, hey, this isn't going to be a fun phone call. I just wanted to talk to you about this, this, and this. Hanging out with Edmund sometimes is like hanging out with your girlfriend, but there's never a fight, there's never an argument, and it's never emotional. It's simply, hey, I really appreciate the relationship we have, and I feel like it could be a whole lot stronger if we figured this, this, and this out. Edmund's told me about some of the conversations he's had with his friends where he'll sit them down and say, hey, listen, I've been friends with you for years and I so appreciate what we have and what we've been through together, but I feel like we're just wasting time here together now. And if we can't figure out how to correct our friendship and make it more productive again, where I feel like we're growing together, then I'm going to have to cut it off. So these types of conversations, most people would never have that type of conversation because it's just uncomfortable to have. They would rather stagnate and not grow for 10, 20 years with the same group of friends than to actually have that conversation. So you can see if you have some friends who have these really well-developed conflict and confrontation skills, you get the opportunity to see just how effective they can be and how much hardship and stress and frustration they can actually avoid in the long term by just having that one little tiny unpleasant conversation now. Another thing you can do that really helped me personally is leaning into your weaknesses. You need to understand where your conflict avoidance is actually coming from before you can really dominate it and permanently correct it. At your highest level of self-confidence, when people come at you with conflict and confrontation and aggression, that's probably going to be exhilarating to you, right? It's going to be a challenge and you're going to have fun with it. So we want to get to that level, your highest level of self-confidence and self-worth.
I am invincible!
And to do that, you probably already know deep down where some of your insecurities and weaknesses lie. A good story for this one is back in 2017 when I was diagnosed with cancer, and I'm fine now. We beat it. We're okay. But when I was first diagnosed with cancer, I went through a year or two of just not being productive at all. I was conflict avoidant. I was just really depressed and not doing well. So I started weightlifting, and that really helped, level out my hormone levels. I got much healthier hormone levels. I feel stronger. I feel healthier, and I feel more disciplined. I feel like I'm a better person, right? So you need to dive down deep and figure out what are the weaknesses that are really driving this intimidation. Where is your fear coming from? And once you identify where that fear is coming from, you can do things to conquer that fear and gain control over that fear. If someone broke into your house in the middle of the night, are you going to sit there and hide and just hope that they don't find you? Are you going to avoid the conflict? Are you going to do what's necessary and stand up and fight for your family and defend your property and your lives, right? And ultimately, people want to be led. They're going to entrust their lives into the non-conflict avoidant people, the people that can step up and take responsibility when the time calls.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
So you need to figure out how to be that person and not be the person that's going to cower away in the corner and hide. The fifth thing I would recommend is playing little mind games on yourself. On Reddit, it seems like they're all about that, saying that you're questing for your wife. But I used to engage in a lot of these little mind hacks and play these little tricks on my mind. So maybe in a situation, you imagine that you are your own lawyer or your own advocate or representative in some way, and you find ways to remove the emotion from the situation, to remove your own inner thought and your cycling mind from the equation. So figure out how to turn life into a game and play some little games with yourself. And it might sound a little crazy, but like they say on Reddit, and as I've done many times before, you can trick your mind into different modes of thinking by playing some little thought experiments on yourself. The sixth thing I would say is make a plan going into your conflicts. For instance, when firing people, if I know I'm going to have a tough time firing someone, I will literally script it out word for word and just read the goddamn script. So sometimes you got to just make a plan and stick to it. This is especially useful if you find yourself across the negotiating table from a very talented negotiator or someone that's very well-versed and comfortable with confrontation and twisting people's arms and whatnot. You have to make sure that you represent yourself properly and you get what you came for out of this conversation. So whether it's a script when you're firing someone or a list of negotiation points that you're absolutely not deviating from, sometimes the best thing you can do to remove your emotion from the equation is to make a plan and stick to it. The last thing I would say is be ready to engage in some conflict. Ultimately, if you want to change your underlying behavior, you're going to have to talk to yourself internally and push yourself towards some conflicts that you would have avoided in the past. In my own life, I can say that when I went through this transition, I definitely got into some conflicts and some confrontations that I probably regret in hindsight.
I immediately regret this decision.
Luckily, most of them were with friends and family and loved ones and people that understood and could just brush it under the rug. But you are going to get into some embarrassing confrontations. You're going to lose some conflicts along the way. And that's just part of the learning experience of dealing with conflict and becoming an adult, becoming a leader, and figuring out how to effectively communicate and influence the world and the people around you. So guys, once again, I'm not saying go out and start picking random fights with every person you see. But you do need to learn how to represent yourself and what you stand for, and make sure that you're not being trampled all over in life. Make sure you and your team and your loved ones are not being taken advantage of. And if you really want to take control of your life and rise up the ranks and escape the rat race, then you're going to engage in a whole lot of conflict, a whole lot of confrontation, and you better get used to it. The sooner you do, the quicker you're going to start climbing up that ladder very quickly, and the quicker you're going to become very confident in your ability to handle anything that's thrown your way, even if it is aggression and even if it is with ill intent. So hopefully this video helps, guys. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, and comment below with how you guys have better developed your ability to deal with conflict and confrontation. There's a lot of conflict avoiders out there, and I find that the way that they get out of that mindset, it's always a very interesting story, and it's always a very personal story. So I would love to see some of those stories below. Let us know how you became a non-conflict avoider. Get out there and get into some productive conflicts, but not violent conflicts. Productive conflicts.